about how you can use the mean, they're the M's, the mean, the median, or mode for central tendency. It just depends on the distribution of data. And what do I mean by depending on our distribution of data? That meant depending on where most of the data falls. So I'm going to put a star here. If the mode, so the most common, if it's like here where it was one of our highest numbers or it's one of the lowest numbers, then it's not going to be a very good measure of center because it's kind of one way or the other. So if the mode is the smallest or even the largest number, then it's not a good measure of center. It is not a good measure of, we call it central tendency, meaning it tends to be in the center. Well, if the mode is the smallest or the largest number, it's not going to be in the center because it's going to be either to the left or to the right. An example of that, if I give you these numbers, 3, 3, 3, 15, 19, 20, and 22. Mode, which one would be our mode? We say 3 is the mode. And see, when you look at all these numbers, it's not really the best measure of center. In this example, that'd be too low to be a good measure of center. A better measure of center is somewhere up here, maybe between 15 and 22. Maybe something like 19 would be a better measure of center. So this is another example of how mode would not be a good measure of center, the same as our dot plot. Our mode was 9 and 10. That's not a good measure of center. That's just whichever one occurs the most. The best measure of center is our kids kind of range anywhere between 0 and 8, and then there's just a lot of them that occur over here at 9 and 10. Okay, so what else would be a good measure of central tendency? We talked about this on the other one. I'll put a star here. If there are 1 or 2 data points that are much smaller or much higher than all the other ones. So like if we have an outlier, then the mean is not going to be a good measure of center because it's going to get pulled one way or the other. If there are 1 or 2 data points that are much smaller or higher than the other data points. In other words, if we have 1 or 2, we call them outliers. I'm going to put that over here. If we have outliers, then this, we call it distorts. I'm going to change colors again. This distorts. What does distorts mean? It means it messes up the mean. How does it mess up the mean? I'm going to underline that. So if you have some outliers, how does it mess up the mean? It's going to either pull your mean higher or lower. So when I time you to come in and sit down, that one day that somebody was really slow, that messes up your mean. It slows your mean so that you're not competing with the other classes. If you race to come in here and sit down really quickly, on average, and then you just have one slow day, your mean's going to get brought up. Your mean could also be brought down. So an example here, what if I give you 3 and then I give you 46, 47, and 48, and those are your numbers for this week. And I time you to come sit down. Well, 3 doesn't really fit in with the rest. We would call this one the outlier. So how would 3 help you on your average if I'm timing you to come in and sit down this week and you have a time of 3 and then all the other times it took you a long time to come sit down? Well, your mean is going to be brought down because of the 3, which will make you seem faster than you really are. So when you have an outlier, the mean / average goes way down. In this case, it's because of 3. So BC in my notes, remember, is because. So your mean or average goes way down because of the 3 in this example. So that's not a good measure of center, because your best measure of center between these numbers would be 47, but your 3 is going to bring your mean way down. So put a star here that your mean is not a good center. Makes you seem faster, and that's good when you're competing, but it's not a really good measure of your center or what occurs the most often. So kind of talk about central tendencies. And the homework is the card worksheet. There is a front and back.